SEQTA can make tracking student progress visible and easy to understand from a teacher's perspective. So let's see how it can be done. So I've come into a progress versus achievement grid, and this is available on the Visible Learning Plus website, and they've given us permission to show this here. So if I'm firstly focus on progress, which is the effect size, so we're looking at the vertical column here. So everything to the right of the vertical means that they've made significant progress. So they have a high effect size. If we look at the achievement score, anything above the horizontal line means that they're above the average for that cohort. So how does this work? The blue box, this is showing that child's made high progress, high achievement. In other words, they're above the average achievement for that particular year level, and they're to the right of that vertical progress line. So they've made really significant progress. The green box shows that they've made great progress, but they're still achieving below the average of their current year level. The orange box means that they're achieving really well, but they're not making the progress that they should have. And this really becomes evident, particularly across NAPLAN. And then finally, the red box shows those students that are not making the progress and not achieving at the level you would be expecting. And what SEQTA enabled schools to do is actually plot all of this seamlessly within SEQTA Analyze tool. So here is Geordie. Geordie's making good progress. She's achieving well. This is Caitlin. Now what we don't know is what was Caitlin's starting point, but she's made really huge progress in the last 12 months or 2 years. And we don't know what her issues have been, but she's still not achieving at the level you'd want, but there's a lot there to celebrate. Now this is Sam, high achiever, but not making any progress. Very able student. And he's obviously been having a bit of a holiday in terms of NAPLAN for the last 2 years. And then finally, this is Sarah. She is not making the progress and she's not showing that she's achieving at a level you would be expecting across the last 2 years. So there are some significant issues here to be explored. Now, how can this all be plotted and made easy for schools? Well, the Visible Learning Plus site provides this sample achievement calculator that schools can just go and download. And what it enables them to do is they can paste in, let's say, their NAPLAN or their PAT score. So they could take NAPLAN reading from year 5 and they would call that time 1. And then they could do their NAPLAN reading in year 7, which becomes time 2. So now we can do a calculation, and this is where this effect size is, and its instructions are explained there. And schools can do that manually, but most people want that to be calculated automatically. So it's found that the average effect size, in other words, for 1 year's teaching, you will be expecting a corresponding 1 year's growth in student learning of 0.4 can be calculated and shown here. And for this year level, it's 0.42. Now it then identifies every child as a dot, and we can see Grace has gone backwards. So she's still progressing well, but she hasn't made any progress. So the ones that have made the progress are Matt, Harper, Mark, Maggie, and so on. And it provides the opportunity to add in 50, 100, and plus students. So it's a really quick way to see whether your students have made progress in any of your standardised testing assessments that you get them to sit. So how does that manifest and show in SEQTA? Well, firstly, if you come to the marks book, this little squiggly line, schools can upload all of their standardised tests, whether it be NAPLAN, PAT tests, CAT 4, whatever. They are available there. And then all the teacher has to do is select the ones they want to view, etc., turn them off and on. So it's another piece of evidence giving great visibility to students' NAPLAN scores, their box and whisker. The yellow dot shows where that child sits in relation to that. And then they can be viewing this information across time. So you can go right back through all of their NAP plan. They can then start looking if they're a school that runs PAT tests, and lots of schools do. So this is showing PAT Maths, PAT Science. There's also the PAT English and so on. So a lot of visibility is available here from just with one click from the teacher's marks books. And so they can take that and use that information in terms of supporting their child or students in their class. So if we then look at it from a SEQTA analysed perspective, all of this information can be surfaced there, and it can be sliced and diced any way a school wants. So this is Elsa. Up the top here, it's showing her individual end-of-year English results. So you can see that she's consistently achieving about 75%, which is really good. And then down here, we have her individual NAP plan results, where an effect size has been calculated. And then finally, we can see the blue line is where her results sit in comparison to the bar graphs, which shows her year level. So it's another way of viewing that information. So you could have some really useful conversations, not only with the child, but also with the parents. And then another way of viewing this is Dylan. So I'm loading the results live. Now I can see the individual NAP plan effect sizes, and then the blue line shows Dylan's results for each of those different test items compared to his year level. Then we can show all of those results and en masse for a whole cohort. And this is also available in SEQTA Analyze. So it's taking all of these individual standardized testing results, and then it's laying it out on this progress versus achievement grid. And instantly what you're seeing here is most of the students are falling into high achievement, so they're above the average, but they're not making the progress. And certainly in my previous life, when we ran this with our big school cohort group of students, we found many of our very able students were sitting here. In other words, they were not making the progress from year 7 to 9 that we would have expected them to have made. In other words, they've had a lovely holiday. And then this looks at the data load live in the system. As you hover over each of those individual black dots, it shows you the name of the student. And clearly here, there's not enough students over in that blue section, high progress, high achievement. Another way of looking at this is these student dashboards. So this is for Jason. We can look at their scores over time here. So this is showing it over a period of time, their grade point average and their effectives, which teachers can track in their attendance role here. Their attendance, the bigger the circle, the bigger the issue is. So you want sort of very small circles here showing good attendance, and then their pastoral care count over time, showing the positives, negatives and neutrals. Another piece of information from an individual student perspective. Then their heat maps can be applied to teachers' marks books. So you can show the grading scale and the colour. All the individual students are here. Here are the individual assessments. And instantly you can see when you apply a heat map, there is real issues with the semester 1 exam. They're all down well below 50%. So big question is, what has gone wrong in this particular assessment? And then finally, when you pull all of this together and you have that individual student here, and you think about all of the key data that lives within SEQTA in terms of attendance, wellbeing, engagement, and really being able to track their learning, it's then the ability to display all of that information so you can really have what I call those evidence-based discussions with parents. And this is just an example of one student engagement dashboard for Lauren Allen, looking at grade point average, looking at her attendance, present and when she was actually in class, wellbeing charts, looking at her current scores, her reflections, her expectations. Is she participating in extracurricular, the community service? What's her feedback like? What's her attendance like? What's her contribution in class? So a whole lot of different reports can be added to the dashboard. And all of this is making student learning visible through the whole SEQTA Analyze tool and the whole standardized testing facilities that live within SEQTA.